morning, another sunny day in San Francisco. Who's awake today? Raise your hand. Wow, I don't believe it. So we're going to start with a great panel. Glenn Gao, who is the founding partner at Crimson Marketing, a consultancy that focuses really on the area of marketing and big data, is going to host a very diverse panel. He told me he's going to make it interesting and spicy. So Glenn, if you want to come up, and look forward to seeing what the panel has to say.
Welcome everyone. I'm excited about today, and what I'm going to first do is introduce our esteemed panelists and ask them to come up to stage. So let me start with John Donahue. John is a Vice President of Partner Channels for Equifax Commercial Information Solutions. He has 20 years of experience in corporate business planning, marketing, and strategy for large and mid-sized companies. And John is actively developing strategies for Equifax to work with customers and partners in the development of roadmaps for incorporating big data into decision frameworks. Also, on a personal note, John is an avid cyclist and a budding wine enthusiast. So John told me it's not really a drinking problem. It's more of a storage problem. So he can't find room for all the wine he's buying now. So he's looking for anyone who can help him store it. Just want to ask him afterward. The next person I'd like to invite up is Arjun Moorthy. He is VP of Business Development at Hubspot. And before joining HubSpot, Arjun worked at SunGard Availability Services as VP of Infrastructure and was a consultant with the Boston Consulting Group. Arjun is a hockey-mad Canadian who recently had a near mental breakdown when the Toronto Maple Leafs blew a 3-goal lead in Game 7 against the Boston Bruins. Now, what Arjun doesn't know is that I am a Bruins fan. And I'd like to point out that it was worse than even he describes. The 3-goal lead existed with only 10 minutes left in the game, yes. And I don't think that's ever happened before in a game of such a high-profile game.
It's awful.
So sorry, Arjun.
Thank you.
Tom Grubb, please come up, is VP of Product Marketing at Marketo. Prior to Marketo, Tom led marketing for divisions of Intuit and CA, startups, and everything in between. He loves engaging with Marketo customers like Insideview to learn how they're using Marketo in new ways to capitalize on the expanding universe of big data. Since joining Marketo, Tom has developed a love-hate relationship with Caltrain to make the commute from San Jose to San Mateo. Also, Tom mentioned that due to the fantastic Marketo IPO, he's buying drinks for everyone here after the panel. Mathew Sweezey is the manager of marketing, research, and education for ExactTarget, the largest marketing software company in the world. I bet you didn't know that.
True.
He is currently writing the official Marketing Automation for Dummies, which is to be published in February 2014. When he's not on the road speaking, he's working at his brewery, which he co-owns in Atlanta.
Nice. It's not a drinking problem, it's a storage problem.
We'll work on that.
Yeah. So too bad we're not doing this panel in Atlanta. All right. And Rhett Thompson is the co-founder at CoreMotives, which was acquired by Silverpop. Rhett is a photographer and traveler. And Rhett, a good story about Rhett is after he sold his first company, he bought a one-way ticket to Europe and traveled to, I think, 50 different countries for 2 years.
Wow. That's right.
Very cool.
My parents thought I was absolutely crazy.
All right.
Who's buying drinks?
What's that? Oh, yeah. All right, everybody ready? Okay. So we're going to talk about how big data informs CRM intelligence today. And big data is a buzzword, but it's transforming both sales and marketing. More specifically, it's transforming CRM, or sales and marketing intelligence. So done well, big data and all the tools available to harness it, like Insideview, and the products from all of our panelists today will create the most significant changes to the sales and marketing landscape we'll see in the next 5 years. So that's what we're going to talk about today. What I hope to do with the panel today is provide you with some insights and some perspectives that will get you thinking about how you can create an unfair advantage over your competitors by using big data with marketing. So let me start by asking the panelists. We hear a lot about big data, so I'd like us to define it first. It's one of those phrases that really isn't defined well, and I think the best way to define it is through some examples. So I want to ask each of you, if you have a good example, to define big data in the context of CRM intelligence. Who would like to go first?
I'll go first. So a great example is look no further than Insideview. They are a Marketo customer, and a few months ago they embarked on a fairly big idea, which was they wanted to start down the path of understanding what customers and evaluators were doing in Insideview so they could better understand those behaviors and leverage them to be really smart about what they say to whom and when to move people through the customer lifecycle journey. And the side story here where it hits big data is they rolled Marketo out to instrument and gather as much of those behaviors as they could. And the moment they did it, we at Marketo knew it right away, because their instrumentation approach was to get all data all the time. And for a company like Insideview, that's a lot of data. And so the lesson learned there is they're already embarking on big data. If you think big data is, there's got to be big value, and I have to have a big idea. And so they're going after it, but the other lesson learned is the temptation to collect everything right out of the gate may not be the best approach. Rather, think about what you're trying to accomplish and narrow the scope down to some set of data that's actually manageable, and then iterate from there. So, real world example.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
So I have maybe a somewhat technical answer, but I think this is actually going to be useful for the audience. There's a great blog post out there that says, what is big data? I feel like it's definitely a buzzword. And there's a few elements that I think would define big data. First of all, I feel like when you hear big data, you're like, oh, data scientists and Hadoop clusters and all this stuff. It's like, what the heck is it? It's not thousands of rows of data or hundreds of thousands. It tends to be in millions and billions. And there tends to be a spatial component and a temporal component to it. It means over a lot of time and in multiple different dimensions. That's a very complicated thing, and the reason that I'm saying this is, I was talking to Glenn last night, I'm not convinced that everyone's problem is integrating big data with marketing. I feel like that's just two fancy words that were slammed together. I think for a lot of people, their problems in marketing tend to be a little bit earlier, which is, nobody knows who I am. I don't have any leads. I need that to happen first. The big data stuff is beautiful, but it's down the line. You have to get to a fairly significant size. Otherwise, if you can handle it in Excel, it's not big data. And most of the stuff I do is in Excel. So I'm not a big data guy by definition at that point then. So
I'd actually like to build off of that. When you think about big data, especially in some of the non-traditional verticals, they immediately go to the social or the billions of lines of information. But really, when you think about big data, it's alternative data sources. It's something that you're not currently using, and a lot of times it's unstructured, and it's harder to integrate. So when we think about the near-term applications of big data, and when you see customers using it today, it's really just expanding thinking around their understanding of their market, their customers, their prospects, who are the most profitable, who are the ones they want to target. And you can do that by not just going to the social and the attitudinal data, but getting better around your understanding of behavioral and just basic even market level data. So you don't, the beauty about big data is it's a journey. It's not, oh, okay, I'm either there or I'm not. There's elements that you can build to as you go, and you can just add the ones that are appropriate. I really like the part about it being relevant. I think that's key as you start thinking about and evaluating it.
And I'll add a piece to that. Just to show of hands from the audience, besides enterprise level clients, if you're an enterprise company, raise your hand. Mid-market, raise your hand. SMB, raise your hand. So kind of a good share of everybody. I think big data is definitely, it's big, and there's certain people that can leverage and have the power to make use of big data. With big data can come big understanding. But I think a lot of us, we work for companies that you can get quote unquote big data, but it doesn't have to be scary, right? Like behavioral tracking. just knowing what people are doing is something that you've never had the ability to do before, most likely, and then using that in relevant context to drive better types of marketing programs is really a small scale use of big data. It's just things you didn't have the ability to have before, and it doesn't have to be that scary. Would only be my addition to that. I mean, big data being used in smaller divisions, not on like massive financial billions of data tables, just like 10 fields, right? What was the last activity this guy did on your website? Can be really helpful and insightful.
Yeah, and it just seems that we're in a time where this big data word is thrown around like, you know, I see people that don't necessarily know how to use Excel that have given talks on big data, and it always makes me cringe. And so, you know, as a marketer, I think we're really good at collecting a lot of information, and we've been doing this now for several years, and we use a lot of tools. So at the end of the day, what do we do with it? I believe that's what makes this a hearty discussion, and what we really want is we want to be able to communicate on a personal level, because people buy from people. At the end of the day, you're doing a transaction with an individual. So how do you take all those massive amounts of data and really pare it down into something that's very precise and meaningful and timely at that moment? One example would be one of our clients is the New Jersey Devils, and so they sell a lot of box seats at the Prudential Center, and some of these are $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 transactions. So it's actually a pretty big transaction to another business. And one of the ways that they try and make their event and that spend memorable is that when a person comes to the arena and they scan their ticket, at that moment, that pings their CRM database, and then that fires off an SMS message that says, hey, thank you for coming to the 6 of your 7 games. We look forward to you being here, and by the way, pick up your free hot dog down by gate A10, something like that. So that's, you know, it's a lot of information. It's being able to react on that in real time. And I think that's really probably what we're going to end up discussing towards the end of this, is we've got all this information, but what do we do with it? And how do we do something quickly with it?
Right. Let me take that and focus on one aspect of big data around the ability to identify and assess prospective customers. So it's a little bit before the process you were talking about when you know who this person is. How does big data help us with that aspect of identifying and determining who the right prospective customers are?
I'll take a stab at that. Well, chances are pretty good that some number of us right now there's data about us being collected. Could be geo, could be a number of things, could be you're on your keyboard now. So the universe, if you think of it as just this gigantic balloon that's blowing up of data, behavioral data, everything you do. In a perfect world, we would all instrument every single thing that everybody does and have a perfect understanding of everything all the time. So as marketers and salespeople, we can be really, really smart in every interaction that we have with you. The data says that like 90% of the data in the world today was created in the last 2 years. So that's the trend, that's where it's all going. So what the end game is, how do you get, and which data should I collect from where, right? It's not all being collected in a structured way in one place. It's scattered everywhere. So how do you collect it? How do you put it into one place? How do you aggregate and make sense of it? And then how do you act on it in real time? So how do you, at that moment, understand enough about somebody and their characteristics and their behaviors to, in that moment, be very, very, very intelligent in how and when you engage with that individual? So today, we're kind of in the primitive stages, I think. The data is growing, it's getting there, but we're still at the very early stages of being really smart and really fast about getting and aggregating and making sense of that data in real time.
I think that one of our challenges here, to answer your question, would be that we're looking for patterns. That's really what we're trying to do. We're trying to take a lot of information, honeycomb that into something that makes sense, that we can use as a predictable way when we're in our prospecting scenario. Okay, a lot of that information is sort of, quote, anonymous. But if we can find trends, find patterns, and then we can, let's say, market or sell according to those trends and patterns, then essentially we expect that we would have a higher achievement of result.
Right. I think when Mark did his presentation yesterday, he shared, I know a lot about everybody in the room, but there's a lot he doesn't know, or we don't know about everybody in the room, and which you can use big data for. If you take your known universe and you build those predictive analytics and you can get the behaviors that Rhett was just describing, you could then apply them to your unknown universe with a greater degree of confidence. And the data becomes trainable over time, which is the beauty of it. So as you play with it and as you get better at it, it gets more predictive, it gets more accurate. So really what the big data is going to allow you to do is build off of your known universes and extend that knowledge in those insights into your prospect universe in the unknown.
And let's take that one step further. I think we're all forgetting that we have the data, but then the technology is also going to be keeping up with the amount of data, right? So we're talking about patterns, but we're not just talking about having one pattern for all your customers, right? These patterns might be individual, right? So as somebody grows, then you can look back in the data and say, now resegment for this one specific profile, and then see exactly what the aggregate of all those people did, and then optimize my campaign for that one new person in that one specific segmentation. Does that make sense? Like being able to take, and we can't do that now just because of the disparity in the data, they don't connect. The technology, the ease of use of being able to do something that complex doesn't happen. And that's definitely something in the future, but that's what big data will allow for, is not just having one pattern, but creating dynamic programs that have dynamic patterns, which can say, look at this person, and then dynamically go find everyone else that exhibited those same behaviors, see what outcomes came from them based on their experiences, and then dynamically then make that pattern for that one individual optimized based on other people.
So I think I have a fairly different viewpoint on this, and I might make a whole lot of enemies after this, but you know, every one of us in the room, we're the people being marketed to for some product. So when I feel as a marketer, I can justify anything. Oh, I want to know everything about you, so I'll tailor and segment beautifully. Yeah, but if I'm on the other end of that, I don't think I always like the fact that you know and look at everything that I do online and mash it up together and say, well, you said this to your niece on Facebook, and then I saw you tweet this, and you went to this, so therefore I've decided this is the right message to you. That's kind of creepy, to be honest. And I think, you know, how many of you guys remember the stat from Umberto yesterday where he said 8% of people pick up a cold call or open a spam email? I think it's far less than 8%. I think it's close to like 2%. Big data is not going to increase that percentage. It's just not. Right? What is going to change is what works today. If you want something, you make the decision to go to Google and search for it or do something. You've said, I'm interested in something. And as marketers, that's the signal that we're trying to pick up on. So, you know, your question was, what do you do before for prospective customers?
Right.
And Umberto talked all about inbound marketing yesterday, and so I can't help but say that's really what, as a marketer, I'd focus on. Write great content, optimize for the web, for social media, get people choosing to come to you. Not gaming the heck out of the system on, I know everything about you and therefore I've tailored something to hit you at the right point on the right day with the text message because I know you like your mobile and you're in Cape Cod. Like, this is madness. That's not the world I want to live in.
I mean, it's...
I think after they make contact with you, that's great. They've said, I want to engage with you, I want to have a relationship with you. Fabulous. Start to figure out what's their interest. But before they've engaged with you, to try to accumulate massive amounts of data to decide how this person wants to be spoken to and on what subjects and all that, I think is very close to a creep line.
No, I think we're talking about spamming. I think that's just modern day spamming, if you're to do that. I think we're all operating under the opt-in principle of, if someone has reached out to us, how do we then optimize that experience for our end game?
Fair enough. Yeah.
Well, there's an argument that says the ultimate experience is that life is a recommendation engine, meaning that wherever you show up, you get recommended things that are value to you as a consumer. And you're saying that that's not always a good thing. But some people could really value that. If they're a consumer, they're at the hotel and they're offered something about a package at the hotel, they may not have opted into a communication about that, but that could be truly valuable to them. So how do you draw that line?
Well, I think in the hotel example, you probably stayed at that hotel before. You are a customer of that hotel. As long as the hotel is using information that you have shared with the hotel, hey, I noticed the last time we left a chocolate on your pillow, you ate it. That's great. You did it at the hotel. That's perfectly legit. Store that, and next time put 2 chocolates on their pillow. But if I chose to eat a chocolate bar at a different hotel, it'd be creepy if they said, I noticed that you like this chocolate bar over at this hotel, so we swapped it for you. I'm like, what the hell? How do you know that? That's disgusting. That's all I'm saying. If it happens with you as your customer, great. Go crazy with data.
So let me ask a question off of this. So we're using B2C examples, and I think historically B2C companies have been very, very good at mining data. They've done this for a very, very long time and focused on how do we calculate what's going to happen with consumers. Now, I want to know about B2B. That's a different animal. And I want to know what can B2B companies learn from what the B2C companies have historically done?
Yeah, we actually had this conversation in our breakout session yesterday. What we're seeing in particular is that B2B marketing is evolving to be more sophisticated and much more a B2C application in the B2B realm. As a matter of fact, you look at a lot of the people who are being hired into roles in B2B marketing, they're ex-B2C marketers, so they're taking that level of sophistication over. It's clearly migrating in that way. We've got a couple of very large telecommunication customers where this is playing out in real time. And the direct mailing to occupant is gone. They need to know that not just John Donahue works at Equifax, but that he works at this building, he's in this role, and really getting to the buyer sooner in the process. And I think that's where the big jump has gone. It's gone from just understanding the business to understanding the buyer and really helping make that connection in the B2B space. Yeah,
I think sometimes we get a bit carried away with these B2C and B2B titles as well, or the segmentations. I mean, at the end of the day, it's someone making a transaction. It's still a person that's buying. And okay, maybe the schedule is really short when it's B2C. I get that. But we still have to be able to, I mean, people like to be noticed. The three examples are probably contradictory to what I'm saying in some sense, but it's like Netflix, Amazon, and Pandora. I think those are three people that pay attention to things I'm doing, and they suggest things that are relevant to me, and I love it. So I don't think that changes when it's B2B. I seriously don't. If I'm looking at a $100,000 piece of medical equipment on a website, sure, I like to have things that are relevant to that suggested on the right-hand panel at the same time. Yeah. Okay, is that a B2C style? Of course it is, but it makes sense.
Yeah, and I'll take that a step further. I mean, if you look at it, if you look contextually where a B2B marketer comes from and a B2C marketer comes from, and you look at the two departments, and you look at a B2C organization and a B2B organization, right? The sales primarily for a B2C organization are all driven by the marketing department. So you have a heavy investment in marketing because there's no sales department. You look at the headcount for a B2B organization, you have a heavy investment in sales and not as much in marketing because all of the sales come from the sales department. So now that you see that marketing is going to be able to prove more value, you're going to start seeing more investment in the marketing department and a growing marketing trend in those departments. I mean, look at this for a good example, right? Behavior analysis. If you're on the B2C side, if you work for an agency, you probably have somebody that has a PhD or some type of a level or understanding of behavioral analysis. When somebody's in this situation, they act accordingly to this, right? That's going to start moving into the B2B organizations because now we have the ability to track this with the big data. And now we can have this data and say, now if we know this person does this, based on statistics, they're more likely to do this. And also on your comment of the purchase, think about the content, right? And it's all about content right now. We all agree with that. If I download a piece of content, just like Amazon says, hey, you read this or you want to buy this book, these two books were also bought by people that looked at that book. Right? Think about doing that with content, and you can do that with big data. And now say, hey, we know your profile, and we know everyone else that was in your profile during this time in their buying process. Yes, they downloaded this document, but they also found these other two documents helpful. You might as well. I think those are all practical applications of big data.
So let's take the B2B situation, and we think organizationally, like you were mentioning. I have a large marketing organization, but I have a very large sales organization now. So who should own big data? Who has the responsibility for feeding those two organizations? And where can it have the greatest impact? Sales or marketing? I know it can have it in both, so you can't say both. So where do you think a year ahead from now, where are we going to see the greatest impact of big data? Is it going to be on the marketing organization or in the sales organization?
I think it's going to depend on an organization's pain points. You know, where's the pain lie in an individual organization? Is it, do you not have enough leads coming in, or do you have a hard time over a long sales cycle where you could be benefited from large data over a long sales cycle? I think it's going to be on an organizational standpoint, but I think marketers right now can take the largest advantage of it because there's such a lack of information with most marketing departments in your databases. I mean, just something simple like appending records, right? So while we're sitting here, Insideview's popping up all these things, right? It's like all you need is an email address. And I try to get people to stop using more than 2 fields on a form because you don't need to ask people questions. Everything else is obtainable from other sources without bothering your clients on filling out a form, right? So just ask one question and then get all that from big data, or what we're calling big data, just other data sources. And you can instantly benefit, increase your conversion rates, find out more about people, and have happier people engaging with you.
So I'm gonna use my soapbox to answer this one. So I believe it's gonna be marketing for the reason that sales is one application downstream from marketing, and there's a lot of different applications represented in the room, right? There's the marketing automation, there's the enterprise relationship planning, right? There's the entire gambit that has to occur, and at the center of that has to be a consistent view, right? There has to be that source of truth on which you can build everything else. So if that first data piece, we talk about big data being very messy and very unstructured. If you don't have that core on which to build, so if your marketing database is not a validated database, it's something you can rely on, anything that you do downstream becomes off target by degrees. Right? So from the center of a compass, I can be off to 1 degree, but if I get out 2, 3, 4, 5. So if I don't have that center in the middle there, so I really think the marketing department is in a great position as part of being able to set the requirements for and manage against, and also determine, as we talked a lot about the data being relevant, understanding where it needs to apply, and then the applications bring it real time to make it relevant, they give it context. Because we're not actually buying data, right? You don't want to talk to the Equifax guy about buying data. What you really want is insights and analytics. So I think the marketing department is in a great position to drive that downstream and let the applications determine how to put it in the right context.
So where do we see this going, guys? I mean, is it that there are going to be companies that pop up that actually help you with your quote big data? Is it, are there software tools that you'll be able to buy?
I think my sense is, first of all, I think marketing owns data, just period, end of story, and sales is the downstream benefactor of what marketing does with the data. And then more and more you see companies spotting up that are they're focused on how to leverage big data. A good example is this little company out of Ireland called DataHug. And what they've done is they've used the big data technology and cracked the nut on how do you stitch together relationships just by looking at the to from everybody's email. And so here you've got a third-party vendor that's focused on a very specific problem, applying their knowledge about big data and how to manage big data, and then get it into some usable form for marketing and sales to take advantage of it. So I think we're just going to see more of that, and so we all are going to have to keep an eye on who are those vendors like DataHug that we're going to tap into, because they specialize on a certain kind of big data collection and aggregation.
So let's talk a little bit about some of the limitations of big data. And many marketing organizations, especially large marketing organizations, actually are overwhelmed with the data they're receiving. They have various tools available to them to try to process some of it, but I don't believe they can process it all. And that's why these companies are popping up to help figure out how to do that. But what are the limitations that aren't going to go away soon in big data that all marketers and sales individuals need to realize exist and just deal with?
Lack of primary keys.
I think.
What was that? I didn't hear you.
I said the lack of primary keys.
Yeah, primary keys.
What was the more money, more problems? Is that the old school adage? The more data you have, the harder it becomes to find what's the relevant piece of information in that data set to make key decisions. And I think just making sure you have a very targeted goal and you're getting data to supplement those goals. If data for data's sake is nothing. It's what can you make relevant context out of.
So again, I feel like I'm going to go back to the statement you said earlier. It's all about the content. It's really all about the content, guys. The optimization on big data is it's like trying to optimize the 2%. What the hell? Build great content. So our founder wrote this deck a few weeks ago called the Culture Code. Anybody saw that on SlideShare? It's the #3 most downloaded deck in the world with 500,000 downloads. He wrote it, I don't know why, he did it about our culture. Very nice. Hugely downloaded, massive inflow of people that want to work for HubSpot. Doesn't matter what we do on big data and did we like figure out exactly the right type of applicant who said this on Twitter, and therefore just put out great content. People will come find it. That's the beauty of the web. It makes the 2-person company equivalent to the Fortune 500 company when you put out great content. So I just think if you start there, you'll get great stuff, and then you can think about it. But it's just like putting the cart before the horse on, let me hire a data scientist to figure out what I should recommend to someone after they've seen content X. Well, they never saw content X in the first place, so what are you recommending to them? It's just like you got to get them to first come and see the first thing. It's little cart before the horse. That's all.
So if I'm a visitor to a website and I haven't downloaded any of your content, but I have looked at all your competitors and I've talked about this on communities, you can get some information about me. You can provide me with the right kind of content if you know something about me. So the assumption is you have some content available.
Right, but do you want to? I'll tell you a good example, retargeting. How many of you like to see ads follow you around on the web after you've gone to one site over and over again? You're like, how do you guys know I was shopping for a Ford? Every one of you seems to know I'm shopping for a Ford. That's not good marketing. So yes, I may know that you looked at my competitor's site. Should I use that to tailor what I show you? Kind of questionable. I would rather, look, I should have a good site. It should be formed well. It should have a good search interface. You'll find the thing that you need on it. You probably won't even go to my homepage. You'll probably have gone to Google and searched for something that got you into some deep, some part of my blog. And that's how the relationship started. But I think once you start engaging with me and I say, oh, you saw this blog on my site and you saw this other one. Now let me show you something. Totally cool. Not using stuff off of other sites. I think that's very sketchy.
I don't know.
So
I'll disagree with that.
Agree? Okay.
Yeah, I'll easily disagree with that. I think retargeting is not being used effectively, but I think it's an awesome tool, right? Because it goes into the point of what's the consumer's mindset, right? If you break it down, and the consumer's in a research stage, right? They're going to want to consume they want content.
When's the last time you clicked on a banner ad?
Well, it doesn't. The technology is different than the ad that was served up. So, am I saying banner ads are wrong, or am I saying it was a horrible ad served? So, I can't answer that question by that question.
Okay. I just feel like nobody clicks on banner ads, and that's what follows me around all day.
Yeah.
I don't want this thing. Go away.
But it's the content. It's the offer. If you have a targeted offer, you're going to increase your odds of engagement, right? It's relevant. So, if you have relevant content. Right, so the slide share deck, right? People found it, but HubSpot does a really good job of inbound marketing. I don't know of any other company that could, drive 200,000 or whatever it was to your webinars or 500,000 slide share downloads. You have a massive engine. Most of us don't have that. So what we're trying to do is figure out ways that we can get an advantage, and I think by having relevant contacts. So if someone goes to a website and we're using retargeting, by understanding big data, knowing who they are and what they find relevant, we're going to increase the odds of engagement.
So I'll give you an example. I have a personal blog. Everyone at HubSpot is like a sideshow business. We all have two businesses because we think we're going to be, something else. But so I have a side blog where I write career advice of all the mistakes I've made in my life. It's fabulous. Check it out sometime. I'm on page 1 of Google for the keyword negotiation advice. Me. I have no product, I have no employees, and I'm kicking the tar out of a whole bunch of companies that write on this stuff. Because I wrote 3 blog posts that are optimized for Google on that. You don't have to be a big company to win. You can be a small shop, write good content, it'll get shared, it will get around the web, you will get a lot of backlinks, and you'll be on page 1.
I mean, this is all good. It's an altruistic, consumer-driven view of the world. We love that. But why does it have to be black and white? All these things that, if they're done right, if you can be really smart about engaging with somebody and without, just 100% relying on content, why wouldn't you? Because everybody here in marketing and sales, go tell your CEO, hey, you know what? I'm not going to do any email. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to write really great content, and we're going to grow our business. It's not realistic.
No, you should do emails. I'm just saying, do it to people that have said, I want you to email me, and this is the kind of stuff I want you to email me. I'm just saying, none of us likes half the marketing we get. Like, we really don't.
But we like the other half.
but we don't even know which half it is. You don't know which half gets the money, which half gets the ROI. The whole thing is broken. Like, as marketers, we can justify anything by just saying, well, it's more tailored and more relevant, so they're going to like it. But you're on the other side of that equation sometimes too, and you may not like that. So all I'm saying is, let them start the relationship with you, and then as they give you more, tailor the heck out of it. But to use third-party sources on stuff they're doing elsewhere and tailor on that, I think that's totally sketchy. I don't think that's right.
So in the old days, before we had big data, people would go to shopping malls and they would interview people to try to figure out how consumers think about things, and they would then start to advertise to them through magazines. I don't find that creepy. I find that intelligent. You're trying to be intelligent about the consumers you're trying to address. And I look at this big data as how can we be intelligent in trying to address, whether they're consumers or B2B buyers, we're trying to give them valuable information. And they may or may not have come to my website. But in order for me to be effective in communicating with them, however I communicate with them, I need to know more about them. And that's the promise that big data provides to us. Anybody agree or disagree? I know you disagree, but anybody agree with that?
Let me give a real-world example. It's a slightly different view where big data and this kind of behavioral monitoring or watching can be applied and be helpful to us as consumers, especially a lot of us consume a lot of software. There's a large consumer brand software company that is a customer of ours, and what they do is they're a cloud and a client-based software company. So they have binaries that you download on your client and you run them on your machine. They ask you if you want to opt in to have data collected about what you're doing inside that application. So by knowing that, and by aggregating, understanding that, and that gets to be a lot of data when you're talking about consumer software, right? It's a consumer product. They're better able to understand how to improve their products and offer something better to you. And so the data collection isn't just the stuff that we're using to try to be smart about our marketing, but it's also about the inbound side of building better products and understanding behaviors on that level too. And I'm seeing that at Marketo, lots and lots of our customers are SaaS guys, SaaS companies, and it has a big, big wave of, I want to know what's happening inside of my product so that I can build a better product, and I want to understand how they're behaving and what they like and what they don't like, or what they don't know or aren't doing, so that I can help encourage them to do other things that will benefit them.
All right. So let's take Arjun's comment about it's better if you've opted into a relationship before you start to apply big data. And let's assume we're talking about a B2B situation, a complex sale. It takes 6 to 9 months. There are 12 people involved in the decision. And they come to your website. And you know something about them because they've opted in, and you can start to follow them, and they are willing to identify who they are. And then they start to some point to interact with the sales organization. So how does big data apply to the sales organization now when there are 3 more months left in the sales cycle, and we have a lot of information, and a lot of other things are going to be happening during that 3 months, a lot of interactions, some of which we can apply big data to. So what are some examples of big data that are applied to the complex sale in a B2B sale?
I want to challenge your premise that it has to happen on my site. So there's a couple of good examples as you look around. Somebody like a Manta or a Sales Spider out of Canada, they've created these small business social networks where a B2B organization could come in and participate in a network, and they get value from having participated in the network. They claim their profile. They increase their Google search optimization for having updated their profile and given this information. So they are willing to actually give you more information because there's value to them. So a lot of it is dependent on what kind of value are you creating for the business or the individual to ask them or to get them to opt in. So, you know, it's one of those, the chocolate may be creepy, but if I'm saying, hey, you know what, I'm going to tell you about my chocolate preferences because every time I show up I'm getting chocolate, right? That's part of what these guys are doing. So I encourage you to go to their sites and see how they're trying to create value. The best part then is you can begin to partner with and get access to those types of data. One of the great things about big data is you don't have to own it. You don't have to do it all, right? There's a lot of help out there. So from there, once you actually can get after that big data, then I think your lens tightens, okay? I think as you look a lot around the types of data assets that you're going to use as you move from the front end of the marketing process to actually the contacting the individual, your lens is going to tighten. You know, early on, I need to know more generic things about your business, about your market, about your industry, about your vertical. As I move further, I need to understand maybe some other user ratings, how have other people evaluated you. And finally, when it gets to the sales team, now I'm into the social selling. I'm into that actual contextual relationship that I'm trying to build with the buyer. So I think that lens is going to tighten as it moves through the process.
Well, if we thought about Insideview for a moment, and let's just say we're in a complex sale that's taking a long time, 6-month sales cycle or more, wouldn't it be helpful to know that the guy you're trying to sell to actually left the company?
Right.
So, in a sense, I think that's a big data discussion and how applicable it is to CRM, because you have the social, well, you've got LinkedIn, you've got Facebook, you've got Twitter, you've got all this aggregation that Insideview's pulling all these things together and triggering via watch lists and things like that. You actually could become informed when something like that actually happened, if you're using the tool properly. So there's a lot of information out there, and I always get stuck with, okay, how do I use it? I've probably said that 3 times up here in some way or another, because it's like, I want to know how can I apply this. And I think that we are in a very exciting time. We have so many tools, so many more coming online, like the one that you were mentioning from Ireland, and I just can't wait to see how all this shakes out.
So I have one example from one of our clients they shared with us, and it's arguably not big data, but it's data that's applied to the sales cycle. And a sales rep was going to go on a sales call to a specific individual, a major account that they were selling to, and they didn't know to follow that person's Twitter stream because they weren't savvy, but someone else was following that person's Twitter stream and shared a tweet before they went to the call. And the tweet was really about the customer didn't know enough about the technology. They didn't know enough about how to make this decision. And that enabled that sales rep to prepare in a much more powerful way for that sales call.
For sure. Yeah.
And I think that's a really good example. And not terribly creepy, because when I tweet, it's public.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm looking for other insights from you guys.
And I think you hit
examples like that.
You hit a key example, right? So big data doesn't mean and I believe we all know that if you put something online, it's now public. And so there's tons of public information that we're including in this big data that is stuff you've already willingly given up, and it just might be aggregated for our benefit. And I think that's something we got to keep in. It's not like we're getting these things secretly, that you might have just willingly given this stuff up. Just like you willingly go to a website and you're being tracked, and the sales rep might know that you haven't been back on the website for 30 days. If they're in a, if it's a sales cycle and they haven't engaged with any of your marketing for a certain period of time, usually like 30 to 60 days, you're probably not going to win the deal. So that lets a salesperson know, hey, no activity is a behavior, so they can then follow up and try to re-engage. Or if there was some specific type of behavior, these things are all instantly put into the CRM, and this all falls into that big data of things that necessarily aren't being filled out in a form field by a prospect, but they're things that they're exhibiting and behaviors they're showing, and it's really helping people to sell much, much more effectively.
So I'll tell you one example that I like. There were 2 slides that Matt Dixon had yesterday that made my heart sing, I swear. I wanted to send it to my whole sales team. Did you guys see the one slide where he said, by the time someone contacts your sales team, they've already done like 57% of their research? That was awesome, and I'll tell you why. And the second one was like 53% of the customer happiness is determined by your salesperson's experience. Great. Because what I really hated in my old job as a B2B marketer was pounding out those boring data sheets about products that no one really read, those one-pagers that would sit by the lobby in your company and no one cared. It was awful. It was like small 12-point font, just terrible stuff. What I like about the new world is people have done all the crappy research by the time they contacted you. And so I want my team engaging in a very good, deep, rich business discussion. Get right to the meat. And so the way that I have big data used is I want my team saying, I noticed you looked at these blog posts and you downloaded this ebook that's super deep about how to fix this business problem. Help me understand why that's important to you. Where's your business going? What's the challenge? What happens if you don't get there? Have like the discussion I hired these guys for. I don't want them to be passing out the data sheets and then saying, I noticed you did all this stuff on Facebook last night, so let's like optimize based on that. I agree with you that some parts of social, like Twitter, totally public, go nuts, use it, see what, but most of the business discussion will be driven by the stuff that they're really reading in depth. We're selling B2B, we're selling big stuff usually. Have a rich discussion, not like the frivolous discussion.
Can we hit on the creepy factor real quick? Because I think this is a huge
the Arjun
thing.
factor?
Well, it's creepy no matter when you use it, right? So it's creepy if you are using this in an advertisement, and it's just as creepy if your salesperson calls up and said, hey, I know you read that white paper, let's talk about it. No one wants that phone call, right? I just gave a keynote the other day on how to sell and not be creepy using social selling and big data. And it all comes down to understanding that these things are not talking points. These things are not, you're not supposed to call up and say, hey, I know you did this, let's talk about it. Because no matter how you approach that, it's creepy. What you need to understand is these things should be used to drive relevance and drive context. And so if you use this in the correct format, whenever you're using it, whether it's pre or post, it can be more effective. Sorry.
I agree. I think it's a good point.
So here's another application in the sales realm, which is I think that you mentioned 57%, I've heard 70% of the sales cycle is complete when someone actually starts to engage. Well, I don't think marketing organizations have done a good job of helping the sales rep understand what has that person just gone through in that 70% of research. And not by individual, by the way, but the type of person that's going to buy from us. What kind of research have they done? What is their perception of us as a company? What is their perception of our competitors? If I can understand that buyer's journey, what they have already gone through as a sales rep, and you can inform me through big data, then I can meet that buyer where they are. They're at that point in the sales cycle. I can understand what you went through because that data is available. I can understand it. And I don't think we're feeding the sales reps effectively doing that. And points on that?
I just think, so, okay, well, I want my buyers, prospective buyers, to be educated on my site. What else am I paying my marketers for? They're supposed to educate my prospective buyers. Put the best content, optimize for the web. Where's that buyer even going to find? They'll go to Google.
So, but I'm saying that's not the way it works, Arjun.
You don't go to Google to find stuff?
No. What I'm saying is it's not just your site they go to. They go to lots of other places.
As a matter of fact, your site is probably the last place.
Exactly.
Right.
If you write great content and you're on page 1 of
Just
Google,
by the very fact
I
that
disagree.
you're the vendor. I mean, even
Really?
absolutely. Who's the last person you're going to trust?
But that's because the vendor, if you write content that's always like, buy my product, agree with you 100%. That's not good marketing. Good marketing is saying, I'm here to educate you to be better at whatever your job is.
But if I'm going to make a buying decision on software,
build trust
I'm going to go see what third parties are saying about that
we talk about this
product.
all day in sales. We're like, you should build trust. How am I supposed to build trust if my whole end game is you should buy my product? That's not trust. That's me trying to cajole you into doing what I want you to do. Build trust is let me solve your business problem. And then maybe if it involves my product, great, you should buy it. And if it's not,
this
that's
is good
cool.
stuff. It's like, motherhood and apple pie, but the reality is if you're going to make a buying decision, probably the last place you're going to go is to the vendor because you're going to first go see what are the third parties who don't have a vested interest in a purchase. Even though what you're saying is true, I get it.
Yeah, the power of the internet made it way too easy to find content in a bajillion different places, right? We're not just going to stop at one place. We're going to go and find in as many different places as we can and then gather that data and make usable context out of it. And yes, you are going to find content on your site, but they're also going to get content from all other different places, and it's just all over the place.
Yeah. We shouldn't. Why do we think of ourselves as vendors? We say we're supposed to be business, but we're business partners. We say all the time, I'm a partner of yours. But I'm a solution partner. If you're a partner, you're not a vendor. So then you're supposed to.
So this whole conversation, though, has been, it was a B2B question, but we keep talking about, now we're interacting back with the individual. Some of our more strategic partners who are really thinking about big data, not next year, but 2 and 3 years out, what they really want to understand is your business network. They really want to use big data to help understand your customers, your prospects, your partners, your suppliers, so that they can have a much more strategic understanding and relationship with you. You can then have that one-on-one conversation with the buyer, but part of that journey is understanding their reality and how it impacts them and where their risks are and helping. It's like we've talked about. Come to them with the solution that they haven't thought of. Don't tell them what they know, tell them what they they don't know. So a lot of what these companies right now, and a couple of them here in the area, we've been here last month, we'll be back next. Companies here in the area, what they're actually looking for is that roadmap of the network around the business to get a better view of what they're trying to do, where they're trying to go, and how they can help them.
So we're almost out of time, just about 5 minutes left. So I want to bring us to one last question and give everybody a chance to comment on this. So let's talk about the future and what we see over the next year or so in big data, specifically as it relates to the issue of sales and marketing intelligence.
You want to just walk down the line?
Whoever's excited about going first, should go first.
I'll jump on it. All right. So I think over the next year, more people are just going to start getting into what we'll call usable little data, not necessarily the giant, massive, big data that we're talking about, massive databases. I think just getting your toe in the water of getting more information about your consumers from other places, learning that a form can give you an email address and you can supplement with others. I think 5–10 years down the road, you'll see big data playing a much, much, much bigger role in terms of dynamically changing and complete experiences for you. But I think in the first couple years, just getting more information from other places, I think, is the key here.
I think we'll start to see some products and services sort of come out of all of this. There'll be a few key players, in other words, that deliver value around the challenge, because data is inherently challenging. It's, there's tons of it. It's all over the place, and people that find a way to connect those things together, like an Insideview, like a LinkedIn, they're bringing a lot of information together that's extremely valuable. I think that those are the people, those that get that right will start to excel, and marketers will end up with tools they can use a bit more. It's either that or it'll all just fade away.
Great, thank you.
Well, the pragmatist in me says that marketers are busy, salespeople are busy, companies are busy people, and so you have to ask, where does big data or a big data initiative fall on my list of priorities? And you've heard some of that discussed here. It's like, where are you going to focus your time and energy? I think the big opportunity for big data is for companies to find ways to package it up and make it available to have quick benefit that the company can see. So rather than take on big data as this monolithic, gigantic undertaking, find a bite that you can take to show value and start to experiment with it, because ultimately, if you don't start doing it now, then you will be behind. So try to find, I would say that the game is to try to find an initiative that you can take a bite, you can make some progress, show some headway, and then go from there.
Great, thank you.
So I actually think what Matt and Rhett said was very right. A couple of comments earlier. I think the big data that you'll see, or the data that you'll see that will be interesting in the next few years, is there's stuff that we choose to make available publicly that we want people to leverage when they talk to us, whether it's Twitter or whether it's stuff that you do on LinkedIn and groups and things like that. Very public areas. You should be taking advantage of that as marketers and salespeople to tailor your messaging and tailor the way you engage with people.
Yeah.
I think that's the right way to use big data, or whatever we want to call it.
I'm going to take a little bit of a different tack and tell you where I think your organizations are going to start seeing this. So this is a great forum and crowd to talk about big data, but as you go back and start to try to incorporate it, take messy, unstructured, imperfect data to your data management team, and you're going to get a lot of head shakes, right? So part of this is going to really, really be paradigm shifting stuff. So it cannot be about number of records and quality all the time. It's going to be really about the quality of the decision. What decision framework can I create? So I really think there's got to be an education in the rest of the organization to embrace the ambiguity. Data will never be perfect. It is a fool's errand to try to get perfect data and to get all the data. What you're trying to do is get relevant context that you can apply consistently time after time. And the folks in this room, we're going to have to be working with the rest of the organization to bring them on this journey, because they're scared of it, I'm telling you. So working with them to do that will be key.
So I want to add on to that, and a final comment. I think what we're seeing in our clients is tremendous pressure from the CMO and senior management inside of companies to take advantage of the data that's available. So when a company says, we want to go after a new market, the question is, well, why, or which market? Well, we have data available. Don't just give me guesses, give me the data. When I want to position a product in a certain way, Well, do we have to do research, or do we already have the data? When I run a campaign, how do I know that's going to work without spending a lot of money? I have data available. And I think we're going to see a lot of pressure inside the marketing organizations to take advantage of what's being fed to those organizations and leverage it. So thank you very much. You guys have been fantastic, and a great panel. Really appreciate your time.